Hello everyone, it's very nice to see all of you joining our Think Academy live streaming webinar today. So today we're going to focusing on the topic on how we can help our kids to be less careless. So first, let me introduce myself first. My name is Candy. I'm currently working at Think Academy Bay Area campus. So in my daily work, I often work with many students and their parents. Let me talk a little bit more about myself. So I was born and raised in China. When I was little, I went to a very traditional Chinese elementary and middle school. And when I went to high school, my parents decided sending me to stay because I was very involved in club activities. I was very good at liberal arts subjects such as Chinese and English and all that. So I ended up coming to the States on my sophomore years in high school. I went to a Navy prep, college prep school in Florida. And I had a really good time. So I learned a lot, experienced a lot in American cultures and all that. And then I went to Penn State for my undergrad. And I ended up getting my graduate diploma at Columbia University. So from the past, I wasn't really good at science and logic thinkings and things like that. I think I'm more a visualized thinker. Also, I'm not a good test taker, so to speak, because I'm very focusing on the test results and for the questions that I got it wrong. When every time I got a text paper back, I'd always go through the questions I got it wrong, and I keep thinking about to myself, why did I get it wrong? It turns out I always think, I got it wrong because I forgot this sign. I forgot to take out this part of the equation. I forgot to do this. I forgot to do that. So when I was talking to my parents, and my excuse always are, I was being careless. So if I can just fix that, I can add 5 more points to this exam paper. So I guess careless are kind of my excuse all the time when I'm getting an okay score. So recently, I got more and more text message from our parents. I guess it's because Corona-19, many of the parents and students, they're staying at home. And parents being really observing on a student's work. And they sitting there watching them and tutoring them for their schoolworks. And recently, I got text message from my parents, and they're asking about their kids' studying habits. Recently, I got a message from my parents, and they're like, Candy, I was so frustrated. I was sitting next to my child and watching him do a problem. It was so simple and so easy. I don't understand why he got it wrong. So for us, this is very, very frustrating. And the parents was like, it was so easy. And when I asked him to do it again the second time, he can get it right. So why was he wrong the first time? I think he was just being careless. And he always does that when he does the work. So I think that's also a reason parents have been reaching out, because many of students are being careless, or that's the word they're using a lot, careless. And that's like I did when I was little. Careless is always the reason I blamed on. But now, when I keep talking to parents and students more often, I start to wonder, is careless really the reason? Or is there something else? So I asked the parents to send me the question that a student got it wrong. And let's take a closer look to see why we got it wrong the first time. So this is the question that a parent sent me. And it is a counting problem. So the question is asking a student to count how many cubes are there. So for us, and as adults, as a teacher, maybe for many parents who are joining us today, this is a very straightforward question. And we can just count by layers, maybe from the top view. And here we can say there's 1 cube. And for my second layer, there are 3 cubes. For my bottom layer, there are 7 cubes. And now it's asking for the total. So total I have we'll have 1 plus 3 plus 7. So total we have 11 cubes. So parents were very, very frustrated and be like, I was sitting there and I watched him got it wrong. How can he got it wrong? That's 11 cubes. But to me, I'm thinking, okay, let's think back a little bit. Maybe, what was the answer? Does the kid get an answer of 8 cubes? The parents was like, oh, how did you know? I was like, well, currently our kids are very lack of the knowledge or perspective on three-dimensional objects. So for them, it's very, very hard to understand there are cubes hiding underneath. Also, it's very important for them to understand how to count in an order. And when we, or as adults or as teachers, as parents, when we look at this question, we have to first think about what is the kid's current knowledge level? Have they learned about three-dimensional objects? Does they know the concept of cubes that are building up? And then we have to think about how we can talk in a way that they understand. So particularly in this question, we're going to start from very basic concept. We want to start from 1 cube. And then we keep building up the cubes and to multiple cubes and to a column. In addition, we also want to think about how we can count in an order. And for students who didn't understand the concept about the cubes that are hiding underneath, it's very, very important that we speak in a language that they understand. For example, kids may easier understand living on the building, living on the floor. So we can transform this question into something that they understand. We can ask them saying, okay, here, look at the third layer cubes. If we're living on the 3rd floor, how many people are living underneath us? Can I be floating? If there's no one living underneath me, what's going to happen to me? I am going to drop down, right? So for my cube that's on the 3rd floor, how many cubes are underneath? There are 2 cubes underneath. So total we have 3 cubes. And then we just count by column and we count whatever the cube that's on the top. So here we have 2 cubes. Here we have 2 cubes. And the first layer, every cube has 1 cube. So it's very, very important that we speak in the kids' language. I believe many of you sitting here today are very involved in your kids' education, and I believe many of you are coming from really great educational backgrounds. And especially here, we are talking about elementary school math. However, when we learn so much, we start to forget how the kids are thinking when how we learned about it when we were kids. So we kind of have to bring it back a little bit. And when you see your kids get a question wrong, it's not necessarily they're being careless. So we want to first think about, is this question exceed their current knowledge level? Have they learned that before? Or is this the first time they were touching base about this kind of a topic? So if so, what would be the most easiest way to help them understand? And we need to transform our language into a way that they understand. And then you might ask me, okay, Candy, you just said the previous question kind of exceeded the student's knowledge level. If so, we're just going to talk about something very basic. We're going to talk about geometry and calculation. That would be something the kids know it very well. I'll say, yes, exactly right. Okay, now let's look at this geometry question. We also have this question in our class. So many students got it wrong. So can you say the student don't understand what is a triangle, what is a rectangle? Well, of course they do. So now you might just gonna say, why they got it wrong? And here comes again. You might say, maybe my kid didn't count it correctly. And let's see, let's count together. So for a triangle, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There's 7 different triangles. And my kid just couldn't count, or they counted less or something like that. And for rectangle, we have one rectangle, we have second rectangle. And they're so easy. So why didn't they count it right? Let's think about this. So right now I notice many students often didn't count this little square on the bottom as a rectangle. For the little square, they're actually a special rectangle, and it fits all the criteria. So for students who got it wrong, they may not fully understand or adapt this definition of the shape. So at least they're unsure, they were guessing. Maybe this one counts as a rectangle, maybe not. And that was the main reason they kind of confused and they got it wrong. Also, another part about this question is that the question was actually asking the difference between the number of triangle and rectangle. So then it involves a different calculation. But if the student didn't know the square was a special rectangle, they might also get it wrong as well. So currently in our lower grades, all of those definitions are very basic knowledge, and that we should fully digest and allow the student to understand how to use them. So if we see a basic question or a question that student got it wrong, first we have to think about if it's exceed the current knowledge level. If it's something very basic, then we have to go back even more to see what's going on. Did they not understand the concept, or are they not practical enough to understand, to use it in other different questions? Also, another big part in our basic knowledge and basic concept is that we want to first build up this solid foundation, because eventually later on all those complicated questions are actually involved through or from those simple and basic definitions and concepts. So it's very crucial right now we build a very solid foundation. And then many of you might say, okay, what about simple calculation? Yes, they're very straightforward, and we learn about many really basic numbers and operations right now. So currently, the numbers and operation, or the calculation in lower grades or in elementary school, is that there are only additions, subtractions, multiplications, and division. And they're all very basic calculation. And currently, right now, for our students, I see many students using this example, so to speak. They can count. 7 plus 4 give us 11, or they can use their finger, and that's very easy. But when they start doing 17 plus 14, and that's when a lot of problems start showing up. And they might not get it, they might got it wrong when they start doing 17 plus 14. So should we say they're careless, or should we say they don't understand how to do addition? Well, I think they're not careless. And the reason is that the student may not understand the digit placement. So 7 plus 4, they're straightforward. They can use finger, and then plus 1 give us 11. But then for the 17 plus 14, it's very important that they know the digit placement. Also, it involves about the carried over. So if they don't know the concept or what is a carryover, and they don't know the placement of a carryover, they might also get it wrong as well. So in grade 2, one of the biggest components is calculation. I see many students here, or at least here in the States, they love doing calculation. They buy different books, and there are a lot of books out there on the market, and they practice over and over. Yes, practice is great, but then they start involving into very straightforward, very advanced calculation topic. But when we combine this calculation into another problem, saying we're gonna transform a word problem into calculation, or we're gonna put this calculation into other format, that start getting confused, and that's when it's starting to get it wrong. So we have to really think about the calculation, and to do it step by step. We don't want to skip a calculation directly from addition all the way to multiplication as a first grader. So that might also exceed their current knowledge level. Also, we want to let them focusing on the steps and how you do it correctly. In addition, I see many students want to practice more, and that's a great thing. But then I also mentioned that we want our kids to know how to do the steps. And we want to always summarize and go back looking at the steps, why they get it wrong, and how we can avoid this kind of problems next time. That's the reason in our class we do a lot of summaries and we write out the steps one by one. Just want to show the student more clearly to help them to become stronger and building a solid foundation. Okay. Then Candy, you might gonna say to me, Candy, you kind of just said, exit the current knowledge level is not careless, and the basic calculation is not about careless. And wondering, I keep saying careless is not the reason. Then you might say, my kids are super smart, and there's so many questions and so easy for them. And I think his level of understanding is already exit of his current knowledge level. But so he doesn't want to write out the signs and all that. And that's kind of another student I see a lot in my class. They're very active and they're very creative. So they often participate really fast. And the often thing I see is that they only write out the answer. So when they only write out the answer, they cannot go back to retrace. And you can say, when I ask them, why you only write out the answer? They said, the question is so easy. I just did it in my brain. And all my steps, and I just write out the answer. That might be true. And when I ask the parents and students and to try to rewrite out the steps, he or she may not be able to do it. But writing out steps can help you to slow down, help you to reprocess and reorganize your thinking. So for example, I have this word problem. Judy is 10th in the line buying bagel, and there are 9 people behind Judy. How many people are in the line? So for students who work really fast and they might just browse through the question, they'll be like, okay, there are 10 people in the line. Judy is the 10th in the line to buy a bagel. And there are 9 people. And how many people in total? There are 10. Super easy. They might just write it out as 10. But actually a question, let's read this together. Judy is the 10th in the line. And then there are 9 people actually behind Judy. So that means there are 9 people in front of Judy, and there are 9 people behind Judy. So total, we also have to add Judy. So total should be 9 plus 1 plus 9 and give us 19. So for students who didn't read this question right, and they just going through this question so fast in their brain, they're skipping steps, and then they might get this question wrong. And it's not saying they're being careless, it's because their brain works so fast and they couldn't slow down. So writing out step is a good way to help them to slow down and to reprocess the information. Also, as when we're doing word problem, especially for elementary school kids, word problem is a big thing. So how many parents will say to me, be like, oh, my kids are having great difficulties doing the word problem? Well, that is true because right now, many schools, currently, we don't see word problems. However, what I notice is that my students are very great at doing patterns, doing numbers and things like that, and graphs, and they're very great at doing the number puzzles. So if we can help them read the question very carefully, word by word, and then transform this type of a question into a visualized graph, it's going to help them to better understand. So students or parents, if you see a very long and worthy word problem, it's very important we circle out the important information and to think in a way to reprocess this type of information into a graph. So help you visualize, and then we do it step by step. So don't miss the important information. And for students who are a fast thinker, which is great, keep doing that. But it's very, very important. Parents start to point out that writing out steps and taking on notes are very, very important habits, studying habits that we need to start develop. And maybe we can give them a little bit encouragement, starting from one questions and from one problems, writing out steps and writing out the units. Those are all good habits that we should start to pay attention on. So let's sum up. The careless is causing the result, but it's definitely not the real reason. As I mentioned, using the examples that maybe we have to think about the question, is the question exit the student's current knowledge level? Or is it even its basic knowledge or concept when a student are a little bit unsure? And then that means they haven't fully adapted or fully understand the concept yet. Also, for a really bad studying habit, that can also be the reason or the real reason for a student get it wrong in an exam or doing homework. It's not necessarily being careless, but those are three of the more real reasons that we have to think about. Okay, so now let's move on how can we help? So I think everyone process their knowledge differently. For example, me, I'm more visualized thinker, so I have to put everything in a graph. It helps me understand. I use different color to color code things and using red to mark out important information. So for students who are more visualized thinker and for students who are more logical thinker, they process the information differently. So we have to observe each kid's characteristics and personalities. We want to pay attention to how they think about the things and on daily work, maybe at home, how they process information. Are they more prefer using graphs? Are they more artistic, or they're more logical and they're thinking in a way, more logical way? So based on the different kids' personality, then we kind of have to adjust the way we teach or we talk to them. In addition, we want to pay attention to each level's difficulties and pay attention to their current knowledge level and perspective. If it's a new knowledge point or it's a new perspective, then we have to dial down and go back, making sure in the beginning that we give them a solid foundation and understanding. That's why when we design our classes and our lessons, we always try to predict the parts that the students might get it wrong. So we kind of forecast the different parts the student might get it wrong. And when we design our materials, we start from very basic definition and concept. And once we know the student fully adapt or fully understand the concept, then we start moving on and adding up the difficulty level. So parents can do that at home as well. So you can observe the work that your kids are currently working on. Is it suddenly going very advanced, or is it okay from very basic? So we want the logical thinking to develop progressively, but not really straight from like a lower bottom all the way all of a sudden to the top. So we should look deeper about the reason why your kid get a question wrong, besides just saying they're being careless. Okay, so for students, I think it's also very important that we don't push our thinkings onto our kids, or at least we don't interrupt their thinking process. I think I see many of the parents right now, they're starting to tutoring the kids about math homework, where your kid's coming to you asking how to do these questions. Or instead of telling them, okay, this question should be like this, we should kind of let them talk and let them tell you what they think. Because it's very important right now we play a guiding role and let our kids to express actively about their thinking process and steps. So for example, in our long-term courses, every week we ask the students to record a little teacher video. So they can be a little teacher and teach us one of the questions from our long-term courses. So why is it so important? I think it's very important that once the kids, especially when they're learning a new knowledge, and as long as they can process this kind of concept and definition into their own understanding, and they can teach someone else, that means they're fully understand the concept and they're starting to understand what is going on. Also, example is that I have a student, he's very, very active and he's very creative and he's super smart and fast thinker. But sometimes he can lose focus very fast. So after class, the parents will text me and they're very worried and they're saying, he's doing some very advanced work. And when he was doing homework, parents be like, I'm not sure if he understood the material because right now I'm watching him doing homework. He got most of the question wrong. But when I call the kids and I would just tell them, hey, can you teach me? This is so hard. Can you be my teacher and help me out? So that surprisingly, the kids are very willing to help and they can really teach you in a way that the most easiest way or the way they understood. And so I can listen to their logic and their steps, their thinking. And surprisingly, it's very clear. So then I would tell the parents, okay, now next time, if the kids got it wrong, there may be a couple more reasons. First, it's been a long day. He or she might not want to do the work. And then he knows how to do it, but you're sitting next to him and you keep trying to telling him what to do and keep interrupting his thinking process. He gets frustrated because he's trying to reorganize his thinking and his logic to his own understanding. So for students who has different process time, we want to allow them to think. Maybe it takes a little bit longer, but you can ask them to teach you. I think it's very, very important we let them focus, especially when they're doing homework. Do not disrupt them and don't maybe trying to put your table to a place that he cannot be interrupt or disrupt during the work. So allow them to think about the whole process and tell them, okay, it's your turn to teach me what I don't understand, be my little teacher. So that's another trick. So maybe sometimes you can ask your kids to explain it to you. This type of things takes a little bit more patience. So, but once a student are understanding the question, they're able to repeat and able to teach you in a way that they understand, then we understand they know the concept and they already learned this definitions or the new knowledge. And finally, about learning habits, I believe habits are developed little by little. And many of you, or especially here in the school, maybe the teacher are not very emphasizing on the studying habits or homework habits like that. But it's very important at home or doing your daily work and encourage the kids to try out different ways of writing out their notes in an organized way. So starting to develop this studying habit or learning habit little by little. And I think they understand, even sometimes they refuse to do it, but they listen. You cannot believe how much they're listening. So I think the kids can learn very, very fast and they're super, super amazing. Like in my class, I see my kids improve every day, every practice and every lesson. So maybe some kids are doing faster than the other, but it's okay. We should recognize all the improvement and encourage them, even just from copying down notes, copying down the teacher's steps, copying down units, and writing out a summary, organizing their notes by themselves. So those are showing they're trying to develop a habit. Like in my spring classes, in the very beginning, the first 2 lessons, I remember that I see many of the students, they don't have the habits of writing out the notes and or writing out the steps. And they just give me an answer where their scratch paper have different kind of things on it. But now I found myself repeating in class, write out your steps. Steps are important. Don't forget your unit. We should circle, draw out during word problems and all that. Then recently I started noticing more and more students in my class and start paying attention on the notes and start paying attention on writing out the steps and writing out units. And even they even remind me and be like, Candy, you forgot writing out your units. Well, I think that's very amazing, and I think it's a really, really great habit to have. And also we have to be able to know how to summarize. So I always think that math is something that it's used in a very different ways, and everyone can use math in a different way. And math is not like history. It's not something you can just memorize a certain answer. It changes a lot. So it's very important that we build up a very solid foundation currently and having a really great studying habits. The kids right now, they learn so fast and they're super amazing. So we have to recognize it and then help them in a way to build up a good habits and good studying notes. And then, so those are the 3 things how we can help and how to solve this problem we keep talking about, careless. So for careless, and as I mentioned, so we don't want to keep saying they're being careless. Yes, careless can happen. It's objectively exist, and maybe sometimes they are being careless, but we have to look deeper and how we can help, and we want to speak in kids' language. And we want to help them rebuild their concept and then give them practice that fits their current knowledge level. And we also want to give good encouragement to help them develop a good studying habits. So when we talk about carefulness, I think it's an ability. It's not everyone can have it now, and some kids may have it develop faster than the other. I think carefulness is a ability to have, and it really takes a long time and a lot of patience to develop. So as I mentioned, that occasional carelessness can happen and do exist. I'm not going to deny it. But we want to focus more on the back reason, the end reason for that. And also, we don't want to keep using careless as an excuse to everything. I think sometimes when the kids will tell you, Mom, I was just being careless, it's okay. You don't deny him. You'd be like, okay, you were being careless. But on the back end, as parents and as teacher, we all need to look deeper to think, why was he being careless? Like, what was the question that he couldn't focus on? What was the question that he had trouble with? So then we look to see if those are the 3 reasons that I mentioned before. Was it because of 3 reasons above, and how we can help him? Also, right now, I think it's very, very important to allow the kids to take ownership about their work. I see many parents start helping their kids checking their works, and they'd be like, the kids spend 30 minutes doing homework. After they're done, they just start wondering, and they left the table. So for me as parents, I'm going to help him checking the work. Yes, that's probably, I heard a lot of parents will say that, but it's a time to allow the students to start taking ownership about their own work. So they need to start do the self-check. Maybe you can sit next to him and watch him do it, but spending maybe 5 more minutes after the homework to start looking over the notes and looking over the question they just did, but allow him to do it. So once the kids taking ownership about their own work, it's very, very important. And then they fully understand, okay, I got this question wrong, and they going to start look deeper on why they got it wrong, and they want to correct it, and that's when they start building up their interest and all that. So hopefully next time when I get text message from parents or you talk about with your school teachers or your kids' school teachers about, oh, my kids are being careless, and there are more reason back to it, not just we just want to say, oh, my kids are being careless. My kids are being careless because the current problem he was doing were difficult for him, or he was being careless because there's many things that he didn't develop. He was careless because he didn't write out the steps. So we want to look more deeper on what was the reason and how we can fit the solutions to help the students to become better. Okay, so I'm moving towards the end of today's webinar, and it's very appreciate everyone joining today, and hopefully today we had a good session. And you can also sign up right now for our grade-specific one-on-one evaluation, and that's having a little placement test. And after the little test, a teacher is going to reach out to you. We're going to look one-on-one about your kids' current math competency, and also to look more deeper on the studying habits and all that. And our YouTube webinar is going to happen every other week. So my next webinar is coming back on the end of May. So we're going to talk about more about how we can help to develop students' studying habits. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.